I think with this, I guess I will stand up here. As with all things social, you know, that a lot of what we used to see was really rudimentary, and now we're seeing, you know, real engagement, real ROI, kind of across the board. And you know, as we saw this morning, I mean, you know, David Kidder from Clickable actually thinks that that Facebook's current, you know, sort of ad strategy really started with Zynga and not with Facebook. And that kind of told me something very interesting. So our moderator here, raise your hand, is Michael, do I say Vos? Voss, okay. V-O-S, but it's
V-O-S.
Okay. And he's the West Coast ad sales, you know, chieftain of AppSavvy, and I'm just going to let them go to it since our last panel ran a little long. So thanks, guys.
Thank you for the intro. Excuse me. So we need to have a little fun here because we're competing with lunch and hungry people. So we're going to try to make this as fun as possible. It should be a very interesting topic. So let me just start off with a quick poll. Many people watch TED Talks. Have any of you seen the unique values of gamers? It was a TED Talk, that presentation. Not many have. Few have. All right, this is good. This will be fresh then. I'm glad. I was worried that it would not be fresh. So I'm going to start us off with just a little story of how gaming started. So it actually was invented in the Kingdom of Libya. Yes, that Libya. Invented in the Kingdom of Libya thousands of years ago. And the reason that gaming was invented is at the time, Libya was undergoing a terrible famine. And the king wanted to come up with something to keep people not focused on the fact that they were hungry and starving, but on something else. So what the king actually came up with was that one day per week, everyone in the kingdom would play games together. They actually invented dice games using sheep knuckles. And the other day, everyone would eat. So one day you would play games, the next day everyone would eat. And they actually got through 20 years of famine with very little revolt, very little struggle, playing games. What a great story, what a great way to invent gaming. And I wanted to actually, Gaddafi, are you listening to that? Because you might have survived a little bit longer. If you had just followed your own history, you would have known that gaming is a fantastic way to both capture people's attention, be social, and you know, really just kind of bring the spirit of competition in. So I really encourage everyone to actually check out that TED Talk that I just cited. It will teach the brand marketers in the room a lot about the unique values of social gamers, of gamers in general, and it'll shed some light as well on how you can apply things that are relevant to gamers to your business. And I would challenge you to say that if we could use gaming to get through things like a famine, certainly we could do it to get someone to watch a video or buy a product. And I would say maybe the modern day equivalent of using gaming is many of us play games all weekend on Thanksgiving weekend to get through a weekend with the in-laws. So maybe that's the modern equivalent of famine. You know, we have a great panel today. Really excited to talk about you know, great opportunities for being a part of gameplay, for the way to measure ROI in gameplay. At AppSavvy, we've done a number of gaming programs which have been massively successful. Just to give you a couple little nuggets, one we did with Richard's company. One of the great things about gaming is you do something like unleash content, and people actually tell you how much they love what you're doing for them. One of the comments that we pulled out of that program was, wow, costumes, characters, abilities, I have to go check out the show Heroes. You guys just totally wowed me with your program. Literally, a gamer said that. Some other examples, we took a program this year where we took a brand from about 10,000 to over 2 million fans in a few days through a game integration. And then finally, if you know, there's any people that have ever worked on entertainment campaigns, one of the hardest things to sell these days is DVDs. Maybe harder than getting people through a famine, but we were actually able to measure ROI against a gaming integration that sold millions of dollars worth of DVDs. So, you know, we'll cover some of these topics in the panel, but there are examples that are out there for people to use gaming mechanics to move product and do great things. So without any further discussion about that, I wanted to jump into our panelists here today. So I wanted to start by talking about what's kind of expanding on the thought of what some of the unique values of gamers are. Jonathan is a creative director at Pereira and Odell. So obviously, considering what matters to a given audience is important when you're developing programs. So maybe you could expand on that thought a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we found, and I'm going to refer to a couple of brands that we've done some social gaming projects with, most specifically Corona, who we've done a couple of things. One is very much sort of a lean-forward gaming experience, and just to illustrate, one's a lean-back gaming experience. And both targeted different segments that the brand was trying to go after. Obviously, as a beer brand, they want that 21 to 35-year-old male demographic. And so that fit more with the traditional profile of a gamer. However, when you look at casual gaming, like in Angry Birds, for example, that profile is very different. It's sort of 35-plus female majority. So what's kind of right for the brand in different situations and who they're trying to target. So, one of the things to take into consideration is sort of the difficulty or the complexity of the gaming experience. How big of a social component is there to the gaming experience? And what's it going to accomplish for the brand? So we'll talk about ROI a little bit, but at the end of the day, when you go to your clients or to the CMO, the question is going to be, how is my investment in this going to move product? And I won't sort of drill down into that right now because I know we want to talk about it a little bit later. But it's always, the consideration of what you're going to produce, who's going to play it, and is that segment really even right for the brand that you're doing it for?
So basically, it sounds like don't interrupt the party, recognize what people are doing already, and try to make yourself a seamless part of that equation as possible.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on what happens when you don't respect those?
One of the things we ran into with the very much a traditional kind of lean forward game that had multiple levels that the player had to clear to accomplish something that was part of a promotional was it wasn't that easy of a game. It wasn't, very simple for them to come in. It required some gaming skills. And some of the people that I think were more in that kind of casual gaming demographic didn't really appreciate it. We got more than a few wall posts about this is too hard. The idea was that you captured this blue bottle and you got entered into a promotion. That was also part of the promotion where you went in, you bought a 12-pack, and something like 8,000 blue bottles were out there that people would get and then could enter the promotion. And they just weren't appreciative of the fact that they may have spent 45 minutes, maybe more, trying to clear these 3 levels, were unable to do it. So I won't say it backfired because overall it was a very successful game for the brand, but there certainly was a portion of the people that played it that weren't necessarily pleased by the experience.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I wanted you to elaborate on that a bit because on the last panel, someone cited the fact that we're exposed to, I think it was 1,100 ads per day, and we don't remember any of them. And I would argue that even a negative reaction is better than complete indifference. So if you're going to play in the gaming space, absolutely important to try to respect what is taking place there and do the best to be as seamless and integrated as possible. But I would argue that the engagement you get, even on the negative side, is potentially more interesting than being completely indifferent or not being noticed whatsoever. A number of the folks here, build games and have done programs. Frank was talking earlier about, building ideas that speak to his audience. I don't know, Frank, if you want to kind of elaborate on the audiences that you work with.
Yeah, sure. We service mostly teen and tween, and so we're different than some of how these guys interact with brands in the sense that we're a standalone platform. So when brands come to us, we look for deep integrated strategies that can actually blow up like an authentic culture for the brand. So we're not, I was joking with these guys earlier, like I don't spend a lot of time convincing like media buyers like about the nitty gritty of ROI because we're in the the nascent phases of like really integrating social and gaming if you look at sort of the history of advertising, and now all of a sudden, technology is sort of overtaking. So I'm sure some of you guys in this room have this experience of trying to convince your bosses, or, and I have guys on my team that, are always coming to me, oh, why should we spend in these ways that seem creative, but I can't sort of track the ROI very specifically? The answer for us, and we do something where you can leverage virtual currency online to win a lot of big things offline, including sort of opportunities to become a musician, or sort of big wish fulfillment type of stuff. And brands, and we make a bunch of original web shows around the things that we do. So brands come in, and the ROI that they're getting is that for a brand that needs to speak to a demo in a really authentic way, when we integrate their product into something that is legitimately cool, like a really cool game or a really cool entertainment experience, it blows up on its own. Like, we don't have to keep driving dollars into it. If it's good enough, it becomes its own engine. So the ROI goes off the chart, but you have to have the nerve and the ability to sort of get in there and have a good idea and have a point of view and stick with it. Because if you're just trying to throw a little thing out there on Facebook or whatever, you can get some decent results. But if you're trying to really stir it up with your demo, the brands that go along with that find that they don't have to oversell. A lot of what we do is about underselling in a way, and just doing something that's really integrated and authentic.
Yeah. So I think what would be helpful for the room would be to actually speak to some resources that are out there that will help the marketers in the room to understand what is happening, quantify what is happening, and to decide and to understand what resources they should leverage to be as integrated as possible and non-invasive. So, Gene, I was wondering if maybe you could speak to some of those thoughts. How do you walk the fine line between invasion and interruption, integration? What tools are out there to navigate that?
Sure. I'd like to back it up a second and first ask, why should you do gaming to begin with? Take it a little bit up to a strategic level, and here's the reason why. If you look at Facebook or social internet networks in general, big social networks, Facebook, I'll talk about Facebook, Global Web Index, Gartner, they're both seeing huge declines in Facebook interaction rates across every age group except for the older age groups. That's a really important thing to think about. And so you have to ask yourself, what are the social drivers? Why are those interactions down? And then I have the answer for that, but the question next is, what activities actually are increasing? Well, one of the activities actually increases on Facebook over time versus going down is gaming. Gaming is one of the key things that actually increases in terms of participation. That's an important key question. Now, why is that? Why are people playing games? Well, if you look at the broader perspective of why people are leaving, or why activity goes down, and why 1 in 4 18 to 29-year-olds are leaving Facebook altogether, it has to do with the fact that Facebook in general, when they designed it, and social networks in general, these big ones, they designed it thinking we just want to group all our friends together and we're all going to have the same interests. The reality is we don't all have the same interests. We all have individual passions. And when you think about advertising on any social network in general, the challenge is you think, oh, I'm going to hit 700 million people. That's wrong. Because it's just you might as well just buy an email list because you're doing the same exact thing. And anyone in Marketing 101 would tell you that's a stupid thing to do. If you just look at Groupon, that company is going down in flames because they have no segmentation whatsoever. They give the same stupid ad to every single person. Now, how does this relate back to gaming? Gaming is a personal passion for a lot of people. And so if you can create a game that applies to an individual passion, you're going to get an amazing interaction and you're going to get a great return on your investment. I don't need to tell you what the tools are because it's basic marketing. Think about approaching your market from basic, right message, right time, right person, right? I'll give you an example, something that we did, which is, because it displays the passion thing perfectly. It was for the Celtics. We created an online game called 3 Point Play, and we targeted specifically Celtics fans. And that was a key thing because you think about the TD, which is where the Celtics play, very small auditorium, not every fan can be there, but they have millions of fans all across the country. Create a simple game where you guess a player's rebounds, assists, and shots, challenge a friend. Now you're like, rather than like spamming the index, you're actually asking a user, hey, you know the people that actually like playing sports, they're your friends, challenge them to play this game with you. Now it's like they're becoming the ambassador. The game is, of course, I don't need to tell you the game was successful. Celtics went from 400,000 fans to 5 million fans through the course of that game and increased, I mean, they sell all their games. So I'm not sure what the ROI is for them other than like creating goodwill.
Interesting points there, and I agree with many of them. I'm interested in hearing as well, obviously both Frank and Richard develop games, and you leverage gaming mechanics in order to grow your game. But maybe if, Richard, could you speak to some of the things that, without sharing any secret sauce, speak to some of the mechanics that are important to consider when you're interested in integrating into a game?
Yeah, and I actually wanted to add on to what Gene said as far as why do you even, as marketers, advertisers, brands, agencies, whatever, why do you even want to be involved in the game space? So first off, how many people here are on Facebook? Not necessarily right now, but just in general. Okay, and so you're one of the 800 million people that are currently on that platform. So out of that, how many people in this room play games on Facebook? Okay, so a little bit more than I expected, but 53% of Facebook users play games. That's a lot of people. And so the main question is, so why are they playing games? Is this a fad? What's happening here? And the thing is there's certain factors that drive gamers to these games. One is they're highly competitive. So a lot of these games are pitting you against your peer or maybe even a stranger, and the whole goal is you want to excel, and you're on a social network. The whole point of a social game is basically a game that's on a social network. So what do you do on a social network? You want to share, you want to brag, you want to tell your friends, look what I did, I got this accomplishment, or I leveled up, or I got this achievement. So competition is huge, and you can really that's one thing that with our games are very focused towards men, so they're highly competitive because of that. Another thing people like to do is collect. So if I think about, as a kid, I used to collect marbles, or maybe you grew up collecting comic book cards or trading cards. So it's the same kind of thing. We sell the equivalent, the virtual equivalent of comic book trading cards or baseball cards. And so a lot of these virtual goods have statistics attached to them, so players want to gather as much as they can. Or if you think about like the farming games, it's all about nurturing and growing something, and so there's a lot of that whole collectible mentality is huge. The other thing is players love the storyline, and this is a great incentive for everyone in this room to get involved. Is as a game developer, we make all our own games, we engineer them, we do the art, we write the content. One of the hardest things for us is constantly coming up with new, fresh content. For example, one of our games is Superhero City, so as you can guess, it's a superhero game. So any kind of superpower that you can imagine has probably been done in any game, any movie. So it's hard to constantly think, okay, what kind of innovative idea can we come up with that's going to excite the user? And so there's a lot of opportunity for brands to take their content and put it into the game, but put it into the game in a really immersive way, so you're not just, the gamer's playing along and all of a sudden you're not bombarded with some ad that is completely irrelevant to what you're doing. So, I mean, if you think about like old school Frogger game, the whole point is you're trying to get across the street. Well, what happens if as you're playing that, there's a big pop-up that comes in front of you about an ad that has nothing to do with what you're doing? You're going to it's going to shock you, you're not very interested in it. But what happens if as you're trying to get across the street, or maybe they change it so wherever you are, you're taking that brand or that experience and putting it into the storyline. So, I mean, it's almost the same as any music video. If you look at the latest Britney Spears or Lady Gaga video, there's product placement in all of them. And if you can do the same thing in games, which we've done, your engagement is so much higher.
Looks like you wanted to chime in at a moment there, Gene. Go for it.
Oh, no, it's great. Dovetail onto what I was already saying. I think that, like, in terms of best practices, I think that's one of the things you asked me, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's right marketing. You don't want to spam people. Like, you look at Farmville or Zynga hugely popular, hugely successful, but they made some mistakes at the beginning in terms of like spamming people's news feeds and making that game almost became a social stigma. And you saw lots of videos on YouTube and people complaining about their friends. Hey, can you help my friend asked me to find this cow for me. Can you help me out? So again, just basic marketing.
Yeah, no, certainly there's a fine line between tact and annoyance, I guess. But I think what has surprised me most is that we've done a number of integrations which have been well matched between what people are doing in a game experience and what either a marketer wants to discuss or what a marketer can offer up. And what we've found is that a lot of the times gamers actually like the presence of a brand's content. Frank, I know you guys do that a lot with some of your partnerships. Can you speak to that? What role does a brand play in the game experience?
And just to be clear for you guys, if you've heard, I'm sure, a lot now of gamification, what we do is more of that variety. So these guys build more sort of traditional games, I think, MMOs and that type of thing. What we do is about, it's social, but in a different, social not because it's in a social network. We're actually, we work with a lot of standalone platforms, and we are one ourselves. But the ways that brands participate, so it's things like this. You can play this game, which might be very social, and there could be elements of brand, participation in that, which is like in-game stuff, which works really well, which you see in movies and now in games. But for us, then it's about the people who are doing well in that game going out and doing something else or winning something else or accomplishing something else. And that's when the brand participation sort of goes to the next level. So what happens then is, let's just say, like recently, like 2 girls won the ability to spend the day with this singer, Grayson Chance, in Chicago. And they flew there with their parents. But to get made up for it, Murad's Clean Scene was there to make them up. And it wasn't this big push about Murad, and it didn't seem like this stilted thing like, remember like the early Top Chefs? It was like, all right, cut to the Toyota, like for the 20th time, It's integrated in a way that is, makes the brand look really cool. And then we deliver that video back to them, which is really about a girl's dream coming true. And then they're associated with making girls' dreams come true. So it's not just about like, oh, we did a cool video, it's social, it's gaming. It's like, okay, now you have something that actually makes you look like a hero. So go use that on your social platform. And it sort of takes it into the sort of real world space, which, so the response has been strong, brands like that.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that in terms of having the gaming experience actually create content to deliver back to the fan base, and that's something that we've launched recently that we're discovering works very, very well. The mechanic in our experience is that you have specific challenges that if you complete successfully, you earn points for. Well, a lot of these challenges revolve around users taking pictures with the product. So again, this is specific to Corona, where one is the beach bucket challenge. Take a picture and upload it of a bucket of Coronas on ice, which ties back into the kind of iconic television spots that they do. Well, in the first couple of weeks, we've had probably 400 photos of these beach bucket challenges uploaded, buckets full of ice cold Corona. The nice thing is when the client is asking, what's my ROI and investment? It's like, oh, here's about 2,500 bottles of Corona that users have uploaded in their pictures. So obviously, the challenge is potentially driving purchase of product. So getting that mechanic to create content not only takes some of the pressure off the brand to continue to put interesting content on the Facebook experience so that that fan base keeps coming back and getting those brand impressions, but it's the type of content that those fans want to see. They want to see it from people like them. They don't necessarily want to see manufactured content. To your point, these are 2 real live brand fans that won this contest that now have this content about them put back to the brand. I mean, the other thing that we found, we did something with Game of Thrones, which was, again, what I would consider a social game. And at different levels, we wanted the ability to kind of unlock content. And I know you look at Gagaville, and that's one of the reasons that it does work is because you're unlocking content or you're able to download songs. So with any type of entertainment property, it's much easier in that respect of providing fans that content as an incentive. But again, if you can have the people playing be the content creators, it also works tremendously well.
Were those pictures moderated or just?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. We have our own special file folder of pictures that we put up on the site.
So I want to there's a couple things I want to discuss before we go to the questions. But I think one thing that everyone wants to know about is, when the rubber meets the road, how do we quantify success? So I kind of want everyone to chime in where they can. Maybe I don't know if Richard, you want to start, or someone else. But how do we prove that this works in selling products at the end of the day?
I think it depends on who you're working with. In the campaigns that we've done, some of them through appssavvy as well, is the brand wants to know, they're basically looking at impressions. So we've done different integrations. For example, we worked with NBC for Heroes. They released their season 4 DVD for the TV show. We also did a DVD release for Green Hornet. We've also done different brands not in the entertainment space. And a lot of what the agency wants to see is, how many impressions did you deliver of this mission or this ability that you gave away or this gift or anything like that. So that's how we've done it. And I've said this before, and I honestly believe that this is a win-win-win, because for the players, all of these games are free-to-play games. So typically industry standard is 97-98% of the players will never spend any money. And so you're driving your company on about 2% of people whipping out their wallet to buy some kind of premium good. But when you do a brand integration, someone else is monetizing. You guys are. And so you're able to offer 100% of your player base this engaging content. So the players, whenever we've done something, our page views have gone up 30%, our number of players have gone up 30%, and obviously for us as a company, we benefit, and then for you as a brand because the amount of engagement you're getting out of it. So there's different ways that you can measure it. For us, it seems to work by impressions.
Any other one? Any other good stories?
Sure. Sure. There's a bunch of different ways to measure ROI. In the case of the Celtics, it was more about creating brand or fan participation. If you look at Facebook in general, if you're just looking at media on Facebook, it's the fact that if you advertise to people who are already a fan of yours as a brand, they're going to spend more money than advertising to people. You're going to increase sales than by just advertising to anybody who's on Facebook. And so you'd have to take kind of Kierkegaard's leap of faith and believe that, by creating something that is truly participatory, like a game, that you're going to drive ROI even greater. I'm going to reach back 7 years to something we did a long time ago for a television show, and it was a game, and we actually increased the rating. The show was going to get canceled, and we increased the rating points with no increase in media spend by adding a gamification element to the media spend, to the existing media spend. So the show was brought back for 2 more seasons. And so in that particular case, ROI was demonstrated by the fact that they got to continue selling ads to advertisers for viewers to see during the show. And so for them, it made them millions of dollars just by tweaking their existing media.
Yeah, I would also say one more thing is that this is, for a lot of this stuff, it needs to be tracked over time. And it's not just like let's do a 50K, one hit, and hopefully, it proves itself out. It's like for any of the stuff that any of us are talking about, it's, if you build a huge, let's just say, Facebook and Twitter and YouTube following, or whatever your sort of, ABCs are, or something even standalone, or it's a game, over time, if you just think about it, if you were tracking, this is the kind of sale, this is hard in a really big company, but okay, this is the kind of sales before we started doing this stuff, and then let's look at a snapshot 6 months out, some of the examples that Richard and Gene were giving. It's if you grow these things from 400,000 people to 5 million people, I mean, you're going to have massive return in sort of sales of product, in brand loyalty, all that type of thing. I mean, you're going to hit a tipping point, so whoever's looking at it macro needs to track it in a way that isn't just science, but really gets a feel for like what's happening with their product and with their campaigns, so, just like old school, well, let's just buy billboards and let's buy TV. Like, we don't know what's happening with this stuff, but we just want to reach at some tipping point of brand awareness. This is a cheaper, more engaging way, to sort of get that old school idea that, like, you see enough Coke billboards, like, you actually feel like you need to drink a Coke, I mean.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, one of the things that we look at whenever we build one of these social games is setting up what the metrics for success are beforehand, so that the client has a clear understanding of what they're getting out of it. And generally, it is page or tab views, application installs, engagement time, and then overall activity or page views based on that experience. The nice thing about page views is that sometimes that number is unbelievable. I mean, I think last year we looked at something like 83 million impressions based on people coming to the page, coming back, making comments, liking specific comments, sharing. So that's always a very impressive number. But with gaming specifically, it seems like the number that really resonates with the client is engagement time. So the first example that I gave, where there were some players that didn't necessarily have a bad experience because the game was difficult, we still had 11, 12-minute engagement time per player on that game. And that's a pretty significant piece of brand engagement right there, and was considered quite successful.
I was just going to add really quickly, Frank makes an excellent point about making sure you're looking at this through the lens of a long-term analysis. I mean, you look at TV or look at print or you look at out-of-home, not all brands can afford to do this, but like Procter & Gamble, for instance, always does very expensive regressive analysis or studies at the end of a year. And all you have to do is ask yourself, like, this is social, but if you look at mobile, for instance, why is it that P&G continues to spend more and more money in mobile every single year, despite the fact that people are still complaining about the fact that there's a lack of measurement and there's a lack of proven ROI? I got to tell you something. P&G would not be spending more and more money every year if it didn't work, because they're like the smartest brand marketers in the world. And they spend the most money, too. I don't know if they spend more money, but I look at the ad servers and I talk to the reps, and yes, they are spending a lot more money.
Yeah, and also just to keep the conversation going, appssavvy has done hundreds of social activity programs, many of which were within gaming. So happy to have conversation after the fact about this as well. But I want to leave it with just a couple tools so that people have some clear things that they can do to help them in their jobs. So number one, there's a resource. The ComScore person has left, so I could say this now. ComScore does not do a good job of quantifying gaming activity yet. They may at some point, but appdata.com is a tool where you can actually see the amount of activity taking place on hundreds of games. So that's a resource you can use for the media folks in the room. And then two stories about engagement, and then we'll go to questions. So number one, I alluded to the fact at the beginning that there are impressions being bought left and right, but nobody really knows if anyone is seeing them. I would argue that gaming is potentially the last place where people are not multitasking, not exposed, or not even seeing multiple screens. They're really completely concentrated on the thing that they're doing in front of them, and these guys can probably back that up. Sorry?
+1 to that.
Yeah. So at the very least, people will see what you are offering them because they are fully engaged. And if you don't believe that, try to take an iPad out of a child's hand as they're playing Angry Birds. They will start screaming, guaranteed. The other thing that I wanted to say as well is we did a program this year where we unleashed content into a game, and it was available only in the US. And this was kind of what I was talking about earlier when we were talking about good and bad reactions. It was U.S. only, and there was actually a revolt that took place on Facebook because and it was Canadians and Swiss people and Swedes because they couldn't access the content that Americans were accessing, and they were aware of it through the virality of Facebook. And what initially was seen as a huge negative turned into a huge positive because we made the campaign global, and the brand was actually, at the end of it, able to sell this virtual product for real money. So it unveiled a new revenue stream. So what initially was, oh my God, the world's ending, we created this revolt amongst Canadians, turned into a great case study for ROI. So I just want to say that there's some experimentation that needs to take place. There's some fun that can be had. It's an interesting space, to say the least. Any other final thoughts, guys?
Excellent points. Let's go.
All right. Questions, anyone?
Oh, yeah.
Questions?
Oh, yeah. These guys are such questioners up here.
I'm good, thanks.
Hey, so, yeah, all right. So, I think there's a very key distinction that you guys have highlighted today. One question I sort of have is, product placement is in all sorts of media, but what you're mostly referring to isn't product placement. It's really game placement. You're making a game for a product instead of putting a product into a game. For a while, EA, like 5 or 6 years ago, started putting billboards in their games on the side of the fields and stuff. Is that dead? I mean, is that still growing? What do you think is going to happen there?
Yeah, I can add to that. We actually, it's not, there are some products that make a game based on their product, but for us, everything we've done is taking a brand and putting it into an already existing game. And I think it's a little less risky to do it that way because you already know you have a fan base around your the core values that you've built into your own game. So then if you're bringing a brand into the storyline and making it part of the, like immersive and part of the content, that's probably my biggest takeaway that I wanted to say today is the engagement that you're going to get from that is so much higher than a billboard or than a magazine ad. Right? It is. It's a sponsorship, but I think Facebook users are very savvy, and so you could do this mission brought to you by. That works. You could do a display ad. We already know how many people click on display ads. But if you take that brand and you make it part of the storyline, like I was saying earlier, people are constantly hungry for more content, and you can be really creative in the ways that you do that. They'll engage with that brand a lot longer. They'll remember that brand a lot longer.
John Davis, Eyesight Design. Quick question. I have a friend that I'm working closely with develop a game. If we have a game, how do we get advertisers?
What was the last part of the question?
If we have a game, how do we get advertisers?
You mean a mobile game?
Yes. Well, mobile or social, both.
I'll give you my card in a little bit.
Softball.
We have a business development team that can help you.
Yeah, blow your site up. The advertisers will come now.
Yeah, okay, we have a question back there.
Hello, I'm Phil Mui from Google. Wanted to ask you guys about in-game analytics. So impressions and stuff like that, the thing that you are on, the platform can tell you. Do you use in-game analytics, and do you do it in-house? Do you use some tools? What do you use?
We generally use the analytics that Facebook provides. I mean, that's at the level that the clients want to see. We don't go really any deeper than that. Sometimes we'll work with our media company just to see the throughput from any type of media associated with the game, how we're driving people there, how successful that is. But we actually don't go much deeper than that.
We use 4. We use Facebook Insights, Google Analytics, a company called Contingent, and then we've recently started creating our own because we haven't found one platform that will do all of it. So it's a little bit of everything.
Some clients want not ComScore, Omniture integration too.
Okay, do we have any other questions?
Questions?
One right there.
Hi, Bart Steiner. You guys talked about the mixed need for ROI. So since there's not clarity on ROI, what's the I often? What's the investment that are expected of companies for the types of engagements you're describing?
Millions of dollars.
Are those American or Canadian dollars?
I mean,
I'm sure it's across the board.
Yeah.
Characterize it a bit for us.
Are you saying was the first part of your statement that there is no ROI here, or where?
No, you were speaking of the fact that there's a mixed need and recognition for ROI among customers. What kinds of
Gotcha.
investments are they being asked to make to deliver the kinds of experiences you guys have been talking
I mean, Gene is not wrong. I mean, anywhere from 25,000 to 2,500,000. I mean, it could be any.
Yeah. So we've done like. I wish I could share the examples, but I can't. But a lot of the movie games have been produced for a little over $100,000.
Yeah. That's pretty consistent with what we find too. We use production partners. We don't do production in-house. And generally, if you're doing something that's deep integration, which is a game around the brand as opposed to lighter medium integration where you're putting the brand inside an existing game, it's anything over 200, 250K is usually not very appetizing to the marketers we work with.
We have like a video piece to what we do, so we often do packages, which not every company can do this if you're just a straight game, where we create a video piece to it, and then we syndicate that out, anywhere from 2 million to 20 million eyeballs, and that becomes, a line item in the budget. And, I can also get my brands, Facebook likes, and I can get them anything they want, basically, because, we're sort of in the business of doing that. And so you can build, the budgets go higher, once you start reaching eyeballs in other ways.
And it's also dependent upon the brand or the company. I mean, some companies have they love process, and you have to pay for that process because we can't have status meetings two times a day with you. You have to pay for that. And that can really drive the cost up by 100%.
And I just wanted to clarify, I mean, that number I put out is really for the Facebook platform. If you have a mobile extension of that and you want iPhone and Android as well, then that cost is significantly higher. We had a conversation before about some brands are just like, yeah, just give me the iPhone app and sort of ignore Android. You were saying you feel that that's right for some brands. I feel a little bit differently. I feel like you really need to give proper attention to Android. And oftentimes if you use porting technology to design and build for iPhone, port it to Android, it pisses Android users off. So I don't know if there's any Android users in here who have had that experience that's really a subpar gaming experience because the time and effort hasn't been put into making it properly for that platform.
My mic's back on. Okay, I think we have to wrap it up. But the good news is it's lunch, so you can really go bother all these people at lunch and not let them eat. But I want to thank the panel. I'm sorry to cut you guys short, but anyway, thanks a lot. And we have a couple of things going on this afternoon that are